I'm so happy today to have Eva Reposa with me here today. And she's someone who I feel very aligned with in our missions and what we kind of want to achieve in the world. She's a holistic wellness mentor and the founder of A Step Beyond, which I want to hear some more about. She is a NLP, neuro-linguistic practitioner and coach, and she's a spirit camp teacher, which I used to find very interesting. It's more bringing that metaphysical teachings to the kids. She is a partner with Life Wave, and she's got a book coming, Parenting Pendulum. That's what I find really interesting, that subject. And you were describing to me like kind of your why you got into all this coaching and trying to work with the kids and everything, and how it kind of went back to when you're looking at, well, starting to write the book and looking at like how the different parenting styles change through the generations. And that's where that pendulum comes. They swing back and forth. And so that this is that you're trying to kind of bring this more into awareness, or for conscious parenting, that we're aware of these styles happening, how it affected you growing up and how it affects your parenting. And so that you can have, instead of coming from a broken place, that it's kind of like a healed, whole place where change can come about. And that in having that change would make for brighter futures. And and if you can make that change into the kids are our future. So Eva, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Patrice. That was a good summary of many of the parts of my business and who I am. And let me really kind of start with that why, because well, I guess I'm sure that I was sort of born with a purpose, as many of us are, and most of us don't know what that is. But just being the oldest of my two sisters, I did a lot more kind of raising my sisters than a lot of siblings might do. My mom was there for the most part, but also a little on this pendulum swing towards the neglectful side. It was just like she really stepped back and let anything happen that would happen, and just really didn't put any of her input into our parenting for us. So that kind of left me in that position where I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is kind of up to me to fill in for these empty spaces, that there were plenty of. So, so I grew up, I was basically raising my sisters, giving them guidance and structure, and, making sure they were getting up for school, and, getting their work done after school, and being home and safe after school. Like, I don't know, all the little things that a lot of firstborns are held responsible for. And so I definitely enjoyed it. Like, I didn't, like, what do you call it? I didn't like kind of regret that position. Like, it was just part of who I am. And so I took that on fine, and then as I got older, I just wanted to do more with kids. And I love little kids. I mean, they're just honest and fresh, and like, who they are unapologetically. And they're beautiful people. And they get along well with me. I get along well with them. And so I did some nanny work. I did some daycare work. I became a lead teacher in daycare. And it was a lot. It was a lot because there are about 20 kids in a classroom. They're all 2 years old. And the
Oh,
energy is
oh,
out
they're
of the
real
room,
young.
and so it takes a lot to be in that space with those kids. And it was a big challenge, but it was one that I fully embraced. Yet at the end of the day, I would definitely need to get all that emotional stuff off of my shoulders. And so I do that by crying to release all of it. So I would go home at night and I'd cry and let it all out. And I'm okay with it. But my husband was like, what are you doing? Like, you can't come home crying every day. That's not okay. And I was like, maybe you're right. I probably shouldn't come home crying every day. So I actually left daycare work and, got into just some retail work at a grocery store where I was definitely more involved with a lot of adults. I taught, it's Trader Joe's and it's a very busy store. So I'm talking every day with like, upwards of 100 people going through the lines throughout the store. And I'm loving the part where I'm making a connection with them and really supporting them in some small way, however I can in the short little interaction that we have. And during this time at Trader Joe's, I really started going through a spiritual evolvement where I let go of a lot of addictions. I went plant-based. I quit drinking alcohol. I quit doing things that really were not very healthy for me. And then I was like, well, starting to get a little out of alignment with the Trader Joe's stuff because they're selling alcohol. And I'm like, I don't want to sell it. They're selling the animal products. I don't want to sell them. So I'm like, well, what would I do if I weren't doing this? And I actually got an answer verbally inside that said, life coach. And so I was like, oh, interesting. And at the time I had no idea what that was. But I had gone to school for psychology. So when I found out life coach is kind of like psychology, but not so deep, not in such a low space, then I was like, you know what, this might actually work. So I was inspired. It may have been my spirit guides that, that gave that suggestion. But I went ahead and got certified. I wanted to be a life coach. I specifically wanted to help parents because while I was in the daycare center, I realized that whatever kind of work I'm doing with these kids at the time is sort of temporary. Like they're going to go on with their life. They're going to go home to their parents. They're not going to keep getting that feedback that I'm offering them. And so it's kind of like not a long-term solution for children. So I was like, well, I really want a longer term solution for children so that so their needs are met on kind of more than maybe they had been. And I just want them to have the opportunity to maintain their authentic self throughout their life. Okay. And so I was like, okay, well, you know what? I can help their parents. Their parents are going to be with them through their whole life, usually, right? And so if I can give them some guidance, then that will benefit their children. It will also benefit them because a lot of times we as parents, and this ties into the parenting pendulum where it swings, and our swings are from a really underdone parenting where you step back, you're real distant, okay? And then the other extreme, of course, is the helicopter parenting where you're all over the kids. You're doing everything with them, for them. They hardly have time to think on their own because the helicopter parent is just going all in. And so I'm like, okay, well, we have these two extremes, but somewhere in the middle is a nice little balance where we're going to have time for the children to explore life independently, come up with questions on their own, discover things naturally, and just learn, in their own way. And then the other side is, okay, well, now they've got questions about things that they've uncovered. And like, is the parent there answering the questions? Are they giving, good, thorough answers to the child so that they can understand life better with the wisdom the parent does have to offer? So I'm like, all right, well, you know what? This is not a big leap. This is just draw it in a little bit, So if you're really not sitting down and answering your kids' questions, ask them, do you have questions, and see what you can say to them to answer it. And if you're not giving them a break, just step back. And then, of course, it benefits the parent also, because when the distant parent is giving advice, they're actually feeling good about what they're doing. They're not just like, kind of distant and disconnected. They're like, oh, I'm actually connected. So it feels good, and then when the helicopter parent steps back, they're like, oh my gosh, I have a minute to myself. Oh, I exist. Like, it's not all about them. It's like me too. Okay. So finding out about this parenting pendulum while I was writing my book. So my book is my memoir, which is most of my life story. And it just sort of came out while I was writing it. Like, I didn't think I was going to be writing about the parenting pendulum. It just appeared, and I was like, oh, this is a big obvious like thing. And, I've tried to research it, and I could find almost nothing about this, even though it's probably been going on for like thousands of years, but nobody talks about it. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So I'm real excited to bring my insights about this to the world, and to really, like you said, just bring awareness, because it's simple little steps moving towards center that will balance this stuff out. And the other cool thing about it is, if you didn't understand why your parent was the way they were, this will help you even as an adult be like, oh, that's what was going on. That's why they were a little extreme, and why I'm feeling the urge to go in the opposite direction, And so, and then it helps you to really understand why balancing this is important, so that each generation can get a balanced parenting perspective, rather than an extreme parenting perspective. And it doesn't, it's not everybody's extreme, because some people were either on the cusp of these changes, or some people where had one parent on one extreme and the other parent on the other extreme. So they sort of got both sides, indirectly. And so it's kind of, unique to each person, their experience. It's not necessarily just like if you were born in my generation and you had neglectful parents, but there is a large trend towards that. And this is why every other generation you can see these patterns, whereas like the baby boomers and the millennials are all over media. Everybody talks about them. It's just like all about them. And who's talking about Gen Xers? Hi, Gen X. Gen Z, who's out there? Gen Z, hello. So there we are when we get used to being raised with this. It's a neglect kind of, in a way. It's a distance for sure. It's a disconnect to some degree. Then this happens. This is happening all throughout society. I realize it's happening in the politics too. So this is kind of what's going on in our political system too, which is why we need to balance this, because we're all so extreme. So real interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it was interesting you brought up about those, like why do we even have like generation Z and X, and because there is something about a generation. There will be the trends and things from happening within their time, and that's going to influence them. And whether it's a overall general trend. And so it's very interesting that you looked at the parenting styles, and that with that understanding, when you can see that, yeah, this is a trend from the parents, that they've if they've come from one extreme where they've been more neglected or left on their own, and then they want to be so more protective and to their kids, because it's what they were lacking. But with that understanding, you can have be able to see clearly that this is something that has affected you. So you know that in yourself. Is this the way that you want to parent? or is this just a reaction or a response for that? And I think that's where like conscious parenting really comes in. It's like when you can be aware and you're consciously making decisions of the way you want to bring up your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important thing. And I know there's a lot of conscious parenting trending now because that is something people are very interested in. It's, I don't, I'm trying, I'm not sure yet if it's more of those people that are the helicopter parents that want to do that. Or, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is another way to be all in on my kids, or if it's really a genuine desire to get this a little bit more balanced, yeah, I just like to use the word balanced. It's not right or wrong or anything like that. I mean, parenting, there's no perfect parent. I mean, like it's just not happening because there's too many variables, I mean, we were raised by imperfect parents. We're going to be an imperfect parent. There is no perfect parent, So letting go of this idea that we have to do it right and instead, just checking in and finding, how do I feel about this? Do I feel like overwhelmed, like it's too much, or do I feel underwhelmed, like we're not connected, and just bringing that into balance is really a very good way to approach it. Yeah. And so good for the kids just to try to do it. You make improvement by trying. So,
Well, I
yeah.
brought up that conscious parenting. Like I know like I'm a baby boomer, but
Hmm.
the conscious parenting when I came up, it was more because I too worked with the young kids. And when you're in that position, where you can see the potential in kids and you get to nurture it and get to watch them blossom. And it's that being conscious, you're seeing the potential and you're
Yeah.
making moves or directions. Like to me, it's like seeing that they're growing to their greatest potential. Like it, as you started off, like the kids, they're beautiful, uh, divine beings, and each with their unique qualities and to me what warms my heart the most is when you can make a difference in a child's life and really, as I say, watch them blossom, watch them come into themselves and their talents uh, and the parents, like, yes, us teachers, educators, or childcare, or we play a role in that too. But it's the parents that are going to be the main uh, person in the kid's life for the majority. So it's
They make a big, big impact. And it's really the primary parent who's there. Usually it's one parent that a lot of the parenting falls on them, and it doesn't have to just be mom. It could be dad just as equally, whoever it is that steps up and does all the parenting, they're making this impact on their child and their awareness of how they're doing this and what they're doing and the choices they make are going to have long-term results with these children. And so, you clearly want to give them, put them on their best feet, so they can go forward with far less like inner child injury. Like we all talk about, oh, woe is me because my inner child is like injured somehow. And, we do all this work and we try to, meditate to quiet our mind. A lot of times the things that we say to our children, the fears we put in them, no, don't do that. Be careful. Watch out. Like just all and most of the time they're unnecessary. It's just like, we're just afraid the kid's going to get hurt. And it's not even like necessarily, something that's really dangerous. It's just like, oh, they might bump their head or their foot or something. I don't know. Anyways, we at young ages, we put a lot of concern into the kids as far as what we're saying to them. And it's just almost better off to just stay quiet. And we've seen these on videos, like how you react to your baby falling. It's like, okay, they fell, they hit their head. What do you do? And it is, if you start laughing, most of the time they'll start laughing too. They don't think that they're supposed to just be in pain and like suffering. And you're like, but if you're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And then they get like all worried because you're worried, and it's just like, okay, well, at some point, we don't realize like they're resilient. They will bounce back from quite a lot of stuff a lot easier than you think they will, but you got to let them find their own reaction, or at least keep yours light, keep yours like, oh, you okay? So that it's not a fear-based, like kind of subconscious fear-based like thing that gets into the back of their mind where, as when you're grown up, you're thinking all the time, you have that constant sort of like level of fear or anxiety that something might not work out well. And where did it come from? Like, why do you feel this way? Well, most of the time we were little children. We were just, our first interactions with life were with a parent who was afraid that we were going to get hurt. So, we got to let a lot of catch the fear-based things, just like we catch the negative thoughts, and like see how we can flip it around, because the negative and the fear-based and all that stuff's real heavy, and it's we don't realize, they're very light beings, it's so much easier for them to just roll with the punches because they're not holding everything in. Okay, so when we a lot of adults, by the time we're adults, we have been taught to hold a lot of stuff in. We've been told to behave, don't cry, just deal with it, suck it up, all those things. And that all of those things are saying to us, hold it in, don't let it out, whatever it is, And so by holding it in, we have this, I don't know, it's like yucky, drudgery that's inside of us that we're carrying and we don't realize it. Okay. So as we go through therapies, we're able to start letting some of that out. Either we're talking about it, or we're actually crying about stuff that happened. Or, we're finding ways to let it out through therapy, which can take years, but honestly, if you can just cry everything out as much as possible, in the privacy of your room, you'll probably get done a lot faster through all that therapy stuff, because you just need to let it out. You just got to let it out. Just like the children, as soon as they fall, if they need to cry, they'll just cry. It'll get out of them. And then they're gone and they move it on and they're happy with their life. And that stuff's not going to come back because they thoroughly let all those negative or dark emotions out. And then they moved on. And I found this true with my kids as they got older. If they had a bad day at school, I'd be like, okay, how was school? And, they might have a meltdown right inside the door when they knew they were safe and it was okay and they were allowed to express themselves. And they would just, run and all out, scream, yell, fuss. And I'm like, cool, anything else? Okay, yeah, a little bit more. And then they were done. And it was just like over. And the rest of the day was fine. Okay, it didn't drag on into the night that they had a bad day at school. You just got to let it out. So that's a very important message. I'm trying to give people permission to let their stuff out, because we did it as kids. It worked great for us. We were told not to do it, and then we stopped doing it. But it's important to just release the emotions and move on in a much happier, lighter space.
I think that goes into like where you say about there's that terminology, emotional intelligence, but it's even like recognizing the different emotions. Like I had listened to it was on a podcast at one point, but they were saying that a lot of the youth today, they're having a hard time even recognizing what they're feeling. They're getting it confused with thinking because like the age of information and it's all this intellectual and all this feeling stuff and like the disconnect that
Mm.
comes about and they're having a hard time like just even getting in touch and recognizing their feelings and emotions, and let alone being able to express them and let them out. It's like,
Right, right. And you're very right about that because basically as soon as you start thinking about your emotions, you stop feeling them. Okay, so you cannot do both at the same time, okay? It's just like you can either feel what you're feeling or you can think about what you're feeling. But they're two different sides of the brain, I think, or something, because it's just like it doesn't work both ways. Like you literally have to like stop thinking about it and just feel it. And this is what I mean by go into your room, shut the door, feel it. Feel it, okay? If you need to scream, if you need to cry, if you need to, I don't know, bite your pillow or whatever, and just go through whatever's coming up, you just got to give yourself permission, that it's okay that you do this and that it's important that you do this. So again, that's going to take a big culture shift because that's not something that everybody's going to go home at the end of the day and just let it all out, and then move on, because we all, and this is part of the stress that we're all dealing with is because we're not releasing it. We say, we're living in stressful times. Well, I mean, we don't have any tigers coming after us. It's like, what is this stress, And it's like, yeah, where there's always stress, but if you let it out, it's gone. It's gone. Like stress is, what is stress? It's almost like fear. It's just like, it's,
I,
it's something you're afraid of that might happen, but actually isn't happening. And so it's just like, okay, so if you can release that fear, oh, then you're back in the present where everything's fine. I mean, there's moments when there's something physically happening at the moment that, you need to protect yourself, but that is most of the time not what's going on. It's more the way you're thinking things through in your head. You're overplaying the negatives that could happen and they aren't actually occurring. It's just you're making it up.
well, I
So
think
fear
like,
fear is one of those things you gotta rein it in, step back, rein it in, and really analyze, am I present now? Like, is this something that's happening now, or am I projecting that into the future, or am I bringing it back from the past?
well, I think too, like in these times, there's a lot of like fear mongering or so much fearful stuff being put onto the youth and the kids today. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's like how,
It's
and that I think
really,
it goes back to teaching our kids like how to be more resilient, that you do have strengths within you, or to stop and look, what's your actual reality here, you know,
mhm,
is this
yeah.
is it just something of fear that you think might is going to happen out in the future? Is it happening now? Is this real? Is this so it's a very timeful thing too. I have a question. Does this fit into your neuro-linguistic
Oh,
practices?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we do. I do a breakthrough, which will release like at least the top six of the emotions that are within us and that have carried over on our timeline. So it could have been previous generations that had these experiences. It could be some people are past life believers, so it could be that you're bringing stuff from a past life, and whatever it is, you need to be able to travel your timeline back to the original place where this emotion started up with you. And in your timeline and then release it way back then. And also bring the lessons that you learned from that emotion. Okay. So if you're there in it, you're like, okay, well, why, why are you feeling it? What's coming up? And when you just ask what's coming up, like so many lessons just come out while you're in that space. And it's just like, you don't realize like by trying to suppress these emotions, you're not allowing the lessons through. Okay, so we accept that there was an emotion. We take the lessons, and it's just like something that we'll just be saying, and either it's recorded and you can get it all written down, or you write it down. Like I would sorry, as a practitioner, I would be writing down whatever they're saying to keep track of their lessons for them. And then you ask, is that all? And if they feel good about that, you go back a little bit more and you look forward and you say, do you still, see that emotion, and if they're still seeing it, there's probably some more lessons, but if they don't see it anymore, then it's cleared. And they're like, okay, then you come back forward and you apply those lessons to all the situations going forward where that emotion was coming up. So you're clearing your whole timeline of each emotion individually. And then you come back to the present. You process through all of this. I mean, it's possible to do all 6 emotions in one day. It would just, it would take a number of hours to get through all of this, and it's a lot to get through. And then you're going to need a day off where you just like rest. But, you could break it up. Obviously, it's a little bit easier, gentler on your system to just break it up and do a couple, one weekend and, have a day off, do a couple another weekend, have a day off. And, but once you've gotten all of the top big 6 emotions cleared out, you are lighter. You are like physically lighter. You feel yourself like happier, because now all that stuff's not holding down your happiness or your joy. It's just like you're free to be in that happy space. And it's an amazing experience. And it really can help you move forward, in places where, you may have been stuck, or like you keep getting repeat situations of something and you're just like, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah.
Well,
What
you just
lesson
need
have
to
I
you need
not
to gather those lessons. Yeah.
learned?
So it's neat stuff.
Yeah.
Love it.
I like
Yeah.
that too. You say breakthroughs. So it
Yes.
helps people to make those breakthroughs
Mm-hmm.
and that it can be done fairly quickly. So why
Yeah.
not? I find
And
it.
yeah, and it's not like you have to sit in. So like, if you do it on your own, sit with the sadness until the sadness is gone. Okay. It could honestly take a year of you being sad every day to get, if you had a lot of problems in your childhood, it could take a really long time, but it's worth it to do that. But at the same time, it's quicker to have a breakthrough where you don't have to experience like all the sadness. You can just kind of go, because I'm taking you up to your higher self, and your higher self is taking you back, so it's really like you're a little bit separated from the experience, and so you can look down and tell if the person in the view is sad, but you don't have to actually experience all that sadness. Then you probably still end up with some tears coming out, because it's just, you are processing this stuff. But it's a lot gentler of a process to deal with, and I mean, even if you have like trauma and stuff like that, there's ways to get around anything that was like too much. It's like you just go further back, right? And then that way you're not sitting there in that trauma, like stuck. I mean, it could happen if you get a practitioner who's like, oh, I didn't, they didn't know how to get you out of that situation. Well, you need to be able to go back up and back further, because it's not usually that the very first time you experience a strong emotion, it's like traumatic. It's just that, those traumatic scenes tend to pull you in, to them. So go back further and get it cleared from earlier. And then that way, when you come through, you're just applying all the lessons to the traumatic moment and then moving on. And it's not like you get stuck in that. So it's really a very kind way to do it. I it's an expensive service because there's so much benefit and it doesn't take hardly any time. So it's like maybe if you don't have time, if it's hard to find time to do things, this is a very good investment because you can get so far for a very little bit of time. So it's important. It's important work really for anybody. You could take an NLP course, try to do it with a classmate there, I mean, there might be a less expensive way to do it, but it's still important to try to get that done one way or another. Yeah.
Well, I like the idea too of having a guide or a mentor there, like,
yeah, somebody with some experience who can, like I said, if you come across one of those traumatic moments, you need to be able to get out of it. So it's important to have a good certified person that can work with you on that.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is beautiful. Have you got any last things that you want to add to this for
Oh,
furthering your, as you said, like kind of your mission or your why of why you're doing this? It's for the
mhm.
kids, like to see. Have you got any
Yeah.
things you want to?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, like, it's best to get this type of work done even before you have children. But most people are not, thinking, about getting all their stuff cleared out and like overcome before they even have kids. They're just thinking, how do I find the right person to have a kid with? And then, is it time? Like, do we have the money? And like, I don't know, like you think about it's really funny the things you think about before you have kids that, maybe are less important than some other things, but you don't know until you have them. And then once you have them, you're just like, wow, I have a lot of stuff coming up, because you know what children do is they push your buttons. They trigger you because that is like important that you get triggered so that you deal with this stuff. Okay. So they are our mentors, just like we think we're teaching them. No, they're teaching us, and it's important to learn from them how they handle things and like honor it and respect it, because they've had less damage because because they're younger and they haven't, been told all the things that we're going to tell them. It's just like I feel bad when I share my message because I'm coming down hard on parents because we don't really do it right, but you have no way of knowing this. It's just there's not so much information out there that's, really highly loving, guidance on how to parent, because we're a pretty low loving vibration on earth when it comes to love in general. Like we do a lot more let's say feeding of addictions, and we think that that's loving. You know what I mean? It's like every morning you do the same routine and you think that's loving. Every morning you get your husband's coffee. You start by feeding him his addiction, or every night you read to your children the same book a million times. It's like over and over and over again. I'm like, oh wow, this is just like, and you don't feel good about it. You're like, I have to do this again, and it's just like you're not being honest about how you feel, like you don't want to do it, but you just keep doing it. We know what love is, right? But we have a lot to learn about love. And it's really important that we at least, like I always say, just try a little bit. Do the Kaizen process. We're 1% better each day. Let go of as many addictions. If you find yourself over and over and over the same thing, see how you can just step back from that, because the it's like I remember trying one time to get my husband to quit drinking coffee in the morning, and I think he was ready to just explode. Okay, and you can't make somebody else like drop an addiction. Like you literally can only do this for yourself, okay, because somebody else has to be ready in their own time. So you just work on yourself, you get your own, free yourself up, because when we drop the addictions and we don't have to have things a certain way, then we're free to try new things or try things a different way. And then we can start learning again, because when you try things in different ways, you're going to find some things work better than others, and you're going to be open to possibilities. So always, yeah, always just keep trying, just pay attention to patterns. If they're repeating themselves, try to pinpoint what that is. I mean, you can journal about what you think it might be. You can journal about your feelings. You can go feel about it in your room. I mean, like there's a lot of different ways to get to the root of something. But as long as you feel it, then you can find out what's the lesson behind it. So, feel into your stuff, find the lesson, write that lesson down so you can see it, and be reminded of it, because that will guide you. It will really guide you into a more loving condition. And we all could use a little more love. So,
More love, I know
yes.
that's always been my thing. I love to start my day. It's a centering meditation, but ensuring that I'm coming from a place of loving kindness and starting the day
Yeah.
that way, and the world's a
Mm.
lot more beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, and it really is a beautiful place. And the more in love you are with it, like the more you'll see all the loving things, and it's just like you'll find, like if you find that you think the world's not loving, or everybody's, got a problem. Just look inside, like what is it? What is really bothering you? Because it's not everybody else. It's something bothering you. Like whatever you're feeling is yours. Just own it, find the lesson behind it, and then you remind yourself that lesson anytime that emotion comes up, because that's how we grow. And we'll become, much better people overall, and certainly better parents by understanding lessons behind our emotions.
Beautiful. I love this. Spread the love and be the best we can be. As parents are those role models, and the kids are going to model what they see. They live what they see. So it starts with you and it ripples off to the kids and then off into the world for better futures. Thanks a lot, Eva. I sure enjoyed this, and I learned lots, and I'm going to look more into that NLP things. I think that
Yeah,
is
very awesome. Thank you, Patrice. I really enjoyed our talk today. Thank you.